says we're connected on X. Believe we're... Alright, it says we're streaming across all of them. I'm just going to double check on... Alright. Testing. It says we're connected on X. There we go. I'm just going to give it a second to make sure that the movie plays, and then we'll do a brief introduction and hop right into the show, shall we? Just going to double check on...
Good.
Alright. Testing. It says we're connected on X. There we go. I'm just going to give it a second to make sure that the movie plays, and then we'll do a brief...
Excessive coverage. Articles, books, documentaries, and...
Alright, that should be enough for me to wait to hear if it comes up.
Gotta make sure it works so you don't go for an hour with no sound.
That would be truly tragic, right? And thank you to everybody who's filing in and working with our technical... Alright, yep, we're all set to go. And now that I have everything confirmed, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tonight I have two very, very special guests, Daniel Goodwyn and David Sumrall, the team over at Stop Hate that were largely responsible for putting forth this film, J6, A True Timeline. Thank you guys so much for joining us. You want to say a few words before we get started? Just a little audience preface in case some people haven't watched it yet.
Daniel, tell them all about the film.
Well, let's see. I mean, it's what it sounds like. This is going to show people the truth about January 6th. Me and David put this together alongside AJ Fisher, directed by Paul Eskendon and executive producer Jason Rink. So we're very excited about this work. And, I think a lot of people are basically agreeing that it's very unbiased and it's just the facts, just the truth. And people don't know the truth about that day. So it's important to get everyone the truth about this. Also, just so people know, it's on X. It's the pinned tweet for J6 True Timeline, and it is being marked as sensitive content. Gateway Pundit just put the story out this morning. 2 million views as of yesterday morning, and it has stopped in its tracks. It is not budged from that 2 million views mark. So everybody go share it.
And remember, this video is available for free at open.inc. That is open
/J6. Open.inc/J6.
Well, yeah, that makes a big difference too. If you want
it
to
does make a big difference in the future because people might be watching this later when it's not on the homepage. It's currently on the homepage, but later it might not be. So
that's right.
Archive reasons to say
read the article. Read the article.
And ink is spelled with a K. Also, read the article.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Well, when we reshare this later, I'll absolutely make sure to provide those links that you guys are talking about so that people can access them. In the meantime, I was just thinking...
when you put it on Twitter, you won't see unless they fix it, you won't see the thing. If you quote tweet, it just says unavailable.
That's crazy. Well, hopefully they fixed it by then, but at the very least, you can... What I like to do at least is, like, when I do it, I'll share it and then I'll screen grab the fact that it's not there, and then, just like type it out for people. But hopefully it'll work. Let's hop in. I was thinking, we'll watch it in chunks. I would love to pause and just like get your guys' input, have you guys share a little bit as we go along so that, we can, really get the behind the scenes experience as we get into this documentary. All right. And without further ado, J6, A True Timeline.
January 6th, 2021. Washington, D.C. The U.S. Capitol Building. An event that has been reported on more than any other in modern history. Despite excessive coverage, articles, books, documentaries, and congressional inquiries, many details about the timeline of events that day remain unknown to the public. Understanding what actually happened on January 6th without bias and with as much context as possible is extremely difficult. News organizations and mass media have controlled the story of that day. Big tech and social media companies have censored, shadow banned, and deplatformed eyewitness accounts, which further skews and misrepresents the truth from that day. Many of us still do not know the names of those who were killed at the Capitol and the causes of their deaths. This video seeks to create a thorough and truthful timeline of the events of January 6th, while shedding light on unheard stories, unseen footage, and new details. When facts are cherry-picked for the sake of political narratives, we the people suffer. Truth, not agenda, is the motivation for this timeline. Prior to January 6th, 2021, there had been hundreds of peaceful rallies following the November 2020 election. Polls showed that many Americans were concerned with election irregularities in key states that ended up deciding the presidential election for Joe Biden. None of these rallies ever turned violent. The morning of January 6th started no different than any of those other rallies. American citizens showing up together to express their First Amendment-protected right to petition their government with a meaningful concern. The mood of the crowd appeared to be joyful and hopeful. It would be the last chance to see the president give a large speech to the nation. To properly understand the events that would soon unfold, it's important to acknowledge that there were many areas of interest that day where crowds were congregating. Those attending President Trump's speech assembled at the Ellipse, a 52-acre park located directly south of the White House and approximately 1 mile from the Capitol. Space was limited there, and the crowd was so big that a sea of people extended all the way to the Washington Monument. Elsewhere in Washington, D.C., crowds would assemble in the morning at both the west and the east side of the Capitol. Still others would loiter in the vicinity to await the next event that would take place that day, of which there were multiple permit holders in the area. At 11:41 a.m., Ryan Samsel, a man who will later be pivotal in the first breach of the Capitol, crosses the street past multiple uniformed officers. Seconds later, the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Michael Sherwin, wearing plain clothes, is seen crossing the same intersection. Sherwin would go on to lead the investigations of Samsel and hundreds of others. 4 minutes later, the same officer whose body cam recorded that interaction is moving through the crowd, responding to a call of a person with a gun. The crowd is compliant as the officers move through the space. They reach their intended target, and after a few minutes of questioning, let the man go. He had no firearm and was only carrying a knife.
Someone saw the handle and thought it was a handgun.
Oh, yeah.
This is my car, okay? So if you have questions or issues. All right, be safe.
Thank you. You too. You guys be safe.
President Trump took the microphone at 12:01 p.m.
Media will not show the magnitude of this crowd. Even when I turned on today, I looked and I saw thousands of people here, but you don't see hundreds of thousands of people behind you because they don't want to show that.
The president gave a speech that morning that was very similar in tone and in style to the many campaign speeches and post-election speeches he had given to audiences around the country.
I'm listening to the speech in my ear, thanks to Scott.
At the exact time that Trump begins his speech, a live streamer is at Peace Circle, at the precise location that the first Capitol barricade breach will occur 53 minutes later. You can see the metal bike rack fencing separating the street from the sidewalks in front of the Capitol building. These area closed signs were posted in compliance with a restriction that went into effect September 7th, 2020, due to the construction of the inauguration stage. At 12.
All right, so we're gonna do our first pause. I think first note for myself, I had saved watching this for this time. Have you ever seen a more peaceful crowd of people of that size? Every single person that you could see is is just calmly moving out of the way. You don't see any sort of aggressive type in that crowd. What do you guys? I know you guys both have watched a lot of footage. What do you guys think? Does that look like a crowd that's gearing up to overthrow the government?
No, it absolutely doesn't. I mean, I've testified in 4 different trials that the crowd was, peaceful. They were, celebratory almost. They expected something to happen. I don't know if it was called joyful or not, but they definitely weren't a violent mob. There's absolutely no video to show that they were. I think that's a stark difference from what people were told.
Yeah, and we were both there. It was very, chill, and it was, if anyone's been to a Trump rally, it was just like the other Trump rallies, because I've been to a few Trump rallies to cover those, and it was just like that, people just hanging out, everyone feels like they're already friends, even if you don't know each other, and it's just, there's a lot of camaraderie and just, good vibes.
So, can you guys help us digest those first couple minutes there? There was a few key names that came up, and it talked about the focal point of the breach. Can you guys give us a little bit of behind the scenes insight? You guys started with this for a reason. Obviously, it's the beginning to end timeline. Can you guys go into that just a little bit?
Daniel, tell them a little bit about Sumrall and, of course, Biggs and that whole setup, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, Sumrall is he's the one that is up at the front of the first line. You can see so right before he comes up, I don't think we really show this in there, but before he comes up, there's a picture of him with Joe Biggs. I wonder if that was taken by Quested or somebody, but it's in like a New York Times. I think it's an Alan Foyer piece, and they at the time were saying that Joe Biggs was like flashing a gun and threatening him and stuff. All that turned out to not be true. But anyways, after that, you will see Ray Epps talking to him right before they go in, and different people have said different things were said there. You can't really tell what they're saying. But that's the second gates. So you kind of see the first gates, and then you'll see the second gates. That's kind of what everyone sees as the first breach. But they have, it's like he was saying, there's in the narration, there's those restricted area signs. Those had nothing to do with you can't be in this area for this time because of this event. It had to do with don't mess with the inauguration scaffolding construction that's going on right now, is really what that was about.
All right. Well, David, do you have anything to add before we continue onward?
No, just keep your eyes on the mood of the crowd, because I think you'll find that what you saw in the first kind of opening part here, you'll see repeated throughout the day, no matter the circumstances. And I think that's really important for people to understand that you're going to see a lot, but you're going to see the crowd always kind of go back to that reset mode. It's really crazy. That's it.
One other thing about Biggs, before this, when he was over at the Washington Monument, people were asking him what his plans for the day was, and they were saying that they weren't planning to go in or anything. They were saying they were planning to protect people from Antifa.
Yeah, I mean, that's also very consistent with all of the past rallies, too, as far as their primary interests are concerned. All right, well, let's take another chunk out of this film. I'm really into it so far. Okay.
4 p.m., a group of demonstrators, including members of the Proud Boys, are seen walking west on Constitution Avenue toward 1st Street while being flanked by police officers from the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department.
Flanked by the DCPD.
15 minutes into his remarks, President Trump mentions for the first time that after his speech, the crowd will be walking to the Capitol. For context, let's hear the president's full remarks during this portion of his speech.
Now it is up to Congress to confront this egregious assault on our democracy. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. Lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
6 minutes following these remarks, the group of Proud Boys and demonstrators seen previously being flanked by the DCMPD have stopped for lunch at a row of food trucks in front of the U.S. Department of Labor on Constitution Avenue. Eddie Block, seen here in a scooter, tells a live streamer the immediate plans of the group.
Where are we headed? Do we know?
We're heading back to the rally.
Oh, okay. Was there nothing going on at the Capitol?
Not really.
Not really.
We're just kind of marching around, letting people know we're here.
Okay, good time. All right.
6 minutes after this interaction, at 12:30 p.m., the U.S. Capitol Police report a very large group heading to the Capitol from eastbound on Pennsylvania Avenue at approximately 7th Street.
Cruiser 50, it does look like we're going to have an ad hoc march stepping off here. There's a crowd surge heading east.
At this same time, police body cam records police intervening between Trump supporters and a counter-protester. The police encourage the crowd to keep marching toward the Capitol.
Come on, guys, let's keep the march going. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going.
President Trump won't be finished speaking at the ellipse for another 40 minutes. During this time...
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Black ski mask was also there at that time and place. You'll see him.
Okay.
Actually, we know his name now. I'll look it up. I mean, you can hit play.
Okay, sorry. I will do that. Just raise your hand when you are ready to tell me.
A man named Ray Epps was filmed on the streets, directing the crowd to the Capitol building.
As soon as President Trump is finished speaking, we are going to the Capitol. It's that direction. That's where our true problems lie. President Trump is done speaking. We are going to the Capitol. That's where our problems are. We are going to the Capitol, where our problems are. It's that direction.
He was filmed the night prior, urging the crowd to go inside the Capitol.
I'm going to put it out there. I'm probably going to go to jail for it, okay? Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol.
I'm sorry. We're probably going to go to jail for it.
Yeah, he did say that. That was...
So there's been a lot of back and forth about Ray Epps in particular. So I won't pause that frequently too often, but one of the big things that I want to stop to actually highlight for anybody who's watching right now, this negates the whole notion that like Ray Epps isn't culpable, that like he wasn't specifically saying we're going to cause some problems at the Capitol, that not only the day before but the day of. So
This was the day before.
Well, I know the other the other footage the day of.
Yeah, both. So he also is on Lara Logan's video from that same day, saying he was whispering to Baked Alaska, saying we are going to storm the Capitol.
Oh, so he's whispering to everybody. He's whispering to Baked. Somebody said that he whispered to them like, "Oh, we shouldn't go in" or something like that. There's just so much nonsense surrounding this guy.
Yeah, but anyways, the guy, Black Ski Mask, who we're going to see soon, his name is Paul Orta.
All right, Paul Orta. We'll keep that in mind as we continue. And like I said, if I can only see you during these parts, so if you want to say something, just stick up a hand or something. Otherwise, I'll be pausing.
into the Capitol. Peacefully.
The crowd surrounding him instantly calls him out as a Fed. At 12:35 p.m., Mike Pence's motorcade is seen heading to the Capitol, turning left on Constitution Avenue from Louisiana Avenue. A minute later, at 12:36, Vice President Mike Pence arrives at the U.S. Capitol.
The Vice President's motorcade has just arrived at the Capitol in advance of the joint session.
The certification is to begin in 24 minutes at 1 p.m. Eastern. As Mike Pence arrives, a crowd is already assembled at the barricades in front of the East Plaza of the Capitol. At this exact moment, President Trump is mentioning Mike Pence's upcoming certification at his speech on the Ellipse, over a mile away.
But now they see all this stuff. It's all come to light. It doesn't happen that fast. And they want to recertify their votes. They want to recertify. But the only way that can happen is if Mike Pence agrees to send it back. Mike Pence has to agree to send it back.
A minute later, at 12:45 p.m., a D.C. police camera captures what looks like a wall of people suddenly arriving about a block west of the Capitol. Video footage captured moments later shows demonstrators gathering at Peace Circle, where Pennsylvania Avenue terminates as a street and turns into Pennsylvania Walkway, a path that leads directly to the west side of the Capitol. There are two sets of metal barricades here, behind which only 5 Capitol police officers can be seen guarding this entrance, while every member of Congress convenes in the building behind them. Just south of this path, a man in a black ski mask removes a barrier and waves the crowd onto the west lawn of the Capitol, while members in the crowd shout at him. With this view, you can see the moment that the first set of bike racks come down and the crowd begins to quickly advance on the second set of gates. Ryan Samsel, who we saw earlier in a white hoodie and red baseball cap, approaches the police line. This would become the first major breach of the Capitol grounds and skirmish with Capitol Police. We will show this crucial interaction in its entirety and use multiple angles to see what happens at this all-important flashpoint. Ray Epps, who we just saw calling for demonstrators to enter the Capitol, can be seen approaching the front of the barricades and speaking to Ryan Samsel. Moments later, the barricade is pushed directly into the police line. After the gate is forcefully pushed forward, U.S. Capitol Police Officer Caroline Edwards is knocked to the ground. Ryan Samsel immediately runs to her aid to help her get back on her feet. The first violent skirmish of the day between demonstrators and police had begun. President Trump remains speaking on the Ellipse.
In Clark County, Nevada, the accuracy settings on signature verification machines were purposely lowered before they were used to count over 130,000 ballots. If you signed your name as Santa Claus, it would go through.
Just to the south, at the 1st Street Southwest in the Maryland Avenue Circle, demonstrators knocked down a second gate. Crowds are now advancing on the west front of the Capitol from 2 locations. With multiple lightly manned police barricades down, the enlivened crowd makes their way quickly to the next barrier, the metal gates in front of the West Plaza of the Capitol. Samsel can be seen tapping the shoulder of Officer Edwards and saying something to her. Looking over the west side of the Capitol from a security camera on the exterior dome, we can see how quickly the crowd is able to fill the area in front of the West Plaza. From this point forward, those in the crowd entering onto Capitol grounds may have seen no indications or warnings that they were in an area that was previously guarded by police and secured by barriers. At 12:58 p.m., the lightweight fencing on the west lawn is pulled down completely by a single person. It is on this fence that signs with the words "Area Closed" are affixed. Thousands of people who will walk up to the Capitol after 1 p.m. will never see these signs.
So I guess what my big takeaway right now as well, watching this, at that point, as people are showing up to the Capitol, there's no way for them to deny the size of this crowd anymore. There's no way for them to artfully dodge the number of people that showed up in support of Donald Trump.
Well, and I'm not saying that girls aren't just as capable of doing some things that guys can do, but holding off thousands of people with no riot gear, no shield, no helmet, no stick, no help, no support. I didn't see that happen in the first place. Choreographed chaos, 101. And I guess you'd have to ask her, did you know that it was going to be like that? And I would just beg to ask, would her answer be, I didn't know? Then I guess you were set up. I mean, you didn't have the gear. You didn't have anything. If you say you did know, why didn't you have the gear? I mean, you've got 10,000 people walking up the street. How could you not know that you need backup? It's just a really bad situation for them to be in, but it was a bad situation for us to be put in as well.
And Trump knew because he had requested for there to be a large number of National Guard, but Nancy Pelosi and the left-wing D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser declined to have them. And since it's their town, they get to say.
Well, I mean, that just sounds like an intentional setup to me. That's one of the things that I noted on my paper here. You have all these angles, and there is a shockingly low police presence. Like, I saw more police, at like the Folsom Street Festival or like at the at the Slut Walk in LA than I'd seen here, and there was like a third of the
on purpose.
It was like a third of the people.
Let me add that before the protesters left the ellipse, they had previously moved supposedly hundreds of barricades that would have diverted the foot traffic in different directions, different ways. And for there not to be any policemen to direct people, there is absolutely no way to know if you were, in the right place or wrong place. But, to move the barricades ahead of time kind of speaks volumes about their intent as well.
And where are the park police? I mean, there should be all kinds of police there directing traffic because there were permanent events. People don't realize there were permanent events. There were stages set up. There were speakers who were going to speak. And Trump was telling people to go there because there was already a plan. Even before Trump planned to do anything that day, there were plans to have events there. And also lining the streets, Constitution, Pennsylvania, whatever, between the Lips or the White House or whatever and the Capitol, there were these same little tiny bike rack things. And those were just kind of seen as, okay, this is kind of traffic directing, kind of like how if you are waiting in line for a ride at a theme park, they'll have those little zigzag things. Or like, at the front of the rally where they were, okay, to go past this point, you have to let the security check your backpack or they'll check if you have a backpack and not let you through or whatever, that kind of thing. So that was all the way around. People were walking alongside those on both sides. So it wasn't like, oh, this is the restricted area, this is the not restricted area. We were basically being trained on the way there that these fences don't mean you can't go past them. Then when we get there and there's only 5 cops there, I mean, the whole thing is definitely a huge setup. Another thing to mention is that guy with the black ski mask. He we don't have the video of that in this movie, but he was right around this time, around this place. He was one of the people moving those bike rack barriers too, not just the snow fencing at the front, but he was actually throwing them over the wall. So not only you couldn't see, not only that they were up, but you couldn't see that they had ever existed because they're behind a barrier now. And he was among other people doing that.
All right. Well, this is just an incredible. I already feel like I know so much more. All right, guys. We'll dive right back into it.
Zooming in closer to the northwest corner of the plaza, we once again see Ray Epps at the head of the crowd, in front of the next set of police barricades. So far, we've seen him the previous day calling for the crowd to enter the Capitol. We saw him that morning, directing people to the Capitol. We saw him at the first gate breach, and now here he is at the second major gate breach. And it won't be the last we see of him. Directly in front of him is where the crowd breaches the metal gates and enters onto the West Plaza of the Capitol. At 12:59 p.m., a man on the northwest sidewalk collapses.
Can you please have someone respond to my location, AED? The bottom of the west front with an individual that's down here, unconscious and not breathing.
The man's name is Benjamin Phillips. He is a computer programmer from Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, who traveled to D.C. to support President Trump. A crowd of people, including police officers, form around him to assist with life-saving measures. While Benjamin Phillips fights for his life outside, inside the Capitol, Vice President Mike Pence is entering the House chamber to convene the joint session to certify the electoral votes. President Donald Trump is still speaking to a large crowd at the Ellipse, unaware of the crowd that has already amassed at the Capitol.
Clear evidence that tens of thousands of votes were switched from President Trump to former Vice President Biden.
Madam Speaker, members of Congress, pursuant to the Constitution and the laws of the United States, the Senate and House of Representatives are meeting in joint session to verify the certificates and count the votes of the electors of the several states for President and Vice President of the United States.
Back outside on the West Plaza, United States Capitol Police Deputy Chief Waldo orders the less lethal team to get into position.
Unit 6, I need less lethal teams that can come up from the upper west stairs and take an elevated position. They're not compliant, climbing, stapling. Let me know when the less lethal teams are in place.
1 minute later, the less lethal team moves into place. At 1:06 p.m., Deputy Chief Waldo orders the less lethal team to launch.
Unit 6, I got a crowd fighting with officers pushing throwing projectiles. I have given warnings about chemical munitions. I need the less than lethal team positioned above me to identify the agitators and start deploying. Launch! Launch!
U.S. Capitol Police Inspector Lloyd is seen signaling officers above on the terrace to open fire on the crowd. Joshua Matthew Black, a 46-year-old man from Alabama, is shot with a round that tears open and lodges in his cheek.
You're shooting us! Oh, we need medical something!
Safety procedures for using these rounds state not to fire at someone at eye level.
I was at the front line trying to keep peace between
So they said they were saying earlier, that was the first kind of like altercation with the police, but this seems like a really dramatic escalation. That crowd didn't look rowdy at all.
Yeah, and the guy who was making the orders was saying like the people are not complying, they're climbing on the scaffolding. There was one guy who climbed on the scaffolding. Everyone else was standing around. What does he mean not complying? He was saying they're throwing things. Like the guy is literally just lying so that he can say he warned. There was no warnings given. They just started shooting into the crowd. And they shot this guy in the face.
And I think the most important thing is just that. I mean, focus on all the things that police did wrong without warning. No exits, no dispersal, no we're going to use chemicals or, anything else. And it's about to cut loose. And like you said, I'm hard pressed to find anybody in the crowd that's doing anything other than standing there, listening to people talk on megaphones and watching the police line up like a firing squad and people saying, please don't shoot us, please don't spray us. And you've got this knucklehead on a radio saying launch, launch, launch. So keep your eyes on the crowd, folks.
All right, and I also want to remind
that's really highlighted in our 1000 Days of Terror, 1000daysofterror.com. That documentary is just 5 minutes long. That was kind of leading up to this. But you can see the clips of the people saying, what are they saying? We're here to redress our grievances. Please don't shoot at us. Things like that, right?
Right. I just wanted to remind everybody who's watching, I'm keeping an eye on the chat. If you have any questions, if you have anything that you wanted us to talk about as we watch this, feel free to put those in there. I'm seeing comments go up, but if you have any questions or anything like comments you want to say, feel free to throw those in there and I will keep an eye out for them. Let's continue on.
Let me just say, this guy's in prison right now. Not the one who shot the guy in the face, but the guy who got shot in the face.
Oh, that's... I feel every time I think to myself, there can be no more ridiculous situations for individuals coming out of J6. I find another one. And was there... I forgot to ask this earlier. The guy who was ripping down the barriers, the ones that had the signs on them, is there an ID on that guy?
I'm not sure, actually.
Okay. Anything else before we continue?
No, but if anybody wants to reference this guy that got shot in the face, it's Joshua Matthew Black, and it was at 107, and that was the first blood that was drawn on the whole crowd, and that's what set the anger off in the crowd toward the police and really started the change for the whole day.
I guess I could also mention, because I don't think it's highlighted in this movie either, like it is in 1000 Days of Terror, but right after this, you'll see, or maybe it is, I don't remember, but Landon Copeland actually pushes another protester into the police line, and he has, after his sentencing, admitted to being Antifa. So that's just notable.
Well, it also seemed like even in the beginning when people were kind of like, there was the first breach where like there was kind of pushing against the fence, it seemed like Ray Epps and, I'm sorry, the first guy's name, I'm really horrible with names.
Ryan Samso.
Yeah, it seemed as if they were at the forefront of that entire breach.
Yeah. Well, there were a few other people on the sides, left and right.
It's interesting. Ray Epps had also met another guy, Dan Layden, down at the Ellipse and spoke to him for quite a while and then told Dan, hey, let's go down to the Capitol. You should go with us. And so they were walking down toward the Capitol, and he told Dan, he said, hey, we're going inside, right? Dan said, hey, I'm not. My wife's states away, and we don't want to pay bail. And so he ended up at the front gate with Epps and put his hands on it at one point, turned around backwards, actually, but didn't matter. And he is in jail for 38 months right now. And Ray's the one that it convinced him that he should go down there. And, of course, Ray in his sentencing is a total different story. So, yeah.
Well, we could definitely talk about that more. We'll get some more in there. Okay, so we have a first question. What were the charges against Joshua?
Well, that's the advantage of having Daniel sitting here with us, because as I sit here and say this much, he's able to go to the charging documents and pull up exactly what he was charged with and exactly how long his sentence is. And I imagine he'll probably cut me off any second and start saying all that stuff. But it doesn't take long.
I'll look it up. It might take me a minute since I'm using the computer for this. I'll pull it up on my phone.
That's a great question, because if you'll look later in the film as well, you'll see him when the famous Q shaman, as everyone, Jacob Chansley or Jake Angeli, is in the chambers there, and he sees him on the floor in front of the podium and says, God bless you, man. So it's...
Okay, I got the indictment.
He shows up later in the film as well.
Mm-hmm.
What you got?
Also, my brother's sent me a message. My brother sent me a message saying that he's just seeing the stills of us and not video. But if there was video, I could pull this up and show you that this is charging. It's a long thing. I guess I should just read it. 18 USC Section 1512C2C, obstruction of an official proceeding and aiding and abetting. 18 U.S.C. Section 1752A1 and B1A, entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds with a deadly or dangerous weapon. 18 U.S.C. Section 1752A12 and B1A, disorderly and disruptive conduct in a restricted building or grounds with a deadly or dangerous weapon. 18 U.S.C. 1752A3 and B1A2, impeding ingress and egress in a restricted building or grounds with a deadly or dangerous weapon and aiding and abetting. 40 U.S.C. 5104E1A, unlawful possession of a dangerous weapon on a Capitol grounds or buildings. 40 U.S.C. 5104E2A, entering and remaining on the floor of Congress. 40 U.S.C. 5104E2D, disorderly conduct in a Capitol building. 40 U.S.C. 5104E2, impeding passage through the Capitol grounds or buildings and aiding and abetting. And I'm sure you did not expect me to have to read for 20 minutes when you said, what are his charges? But that's the actual
I guess you could have just said, well, he had a pocket knife in his pocket when they caught him, exactly. And so they stuck a bunch of charges. Sorry about that, folks, but that's the way it goes. In 3 years, I think, was his sentence.
For having a pocket, that's so ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
One more comment. The extremely loud emergency Capitol Hill public address system was available to give, quote, proper notice.
That's part of the warning system that we said was never utilized. The Capitol Police have to do that. They have to give multiple warnings before they can attack a crowd. And that whole system was never active for the day. They tried to use a little bitty speaker a lot later. And
LRAD later, and it barely anyone heard that, maybe 100 people, and that was a lot later. And they also didn't use the speakers inside because they have intercom systems on the inside that they were not using.
That's right. They could have done a lot that they didn't do. Once again, choreographed chaos and a setup. So
that just seems, I mean, this just tells you the power of mainstream media when they want you to believe a narrative, because the evidence is overwhelming that this was not a pre-planned event. This was in no way an attempt to overthrow the government. This was not an
Kim, let me just say, if those 5 police officers at the first gate had said, oh, yeah, by the way, they found pipe bombs on our other properties, so you may not want to go in here or you may explode, I bet nobody would have gone in. They would have said, okay, this is fine for us. We'll just protest right here, and we'll scream loud enough. We got plenty of people coming, and we'll just stay right here and be super, super loud. But they didn't warn us that there were explosives on other properties and that we could all die. And they didn't say anything to any. So, that's just more of the same.
I got another comment that said the big system was used around 6 p.m. Can you guys verify that?
There was the curfew and the National Guard showing up. So I think they might have used it a little bit later in the day. I don't know the exact time. Do you know, David?
I don't, but I bet Ron would. I'll ask him.
That's probably who's saying it.
The commenter wanted me to let you know that it's Ron the Reminiscent.
Yeah, that's what I figured. He's always
tell me what time it was, Ron. I know you got a video of it somewhere.
What's the hashtag? J6 without warning, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what it is.
That was our very first comment.
They really should have warned people. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And then the way they use these munitions y'all are about to see is totally unacceptable. First, the munitions that they're about to use were not approved for use. So somebody must have broken into the cabinet. And then they went through all their munitions. And you're going to see just a clown show and kind of the behind the scenes that nobody's shown. Of course, the select committee won't, but we will.
Right. I feel like there's almost no way this isn't going to make me cry at some point. So get ready for that.
Get the tissue. That's right.
Yeah, I have them. I have them right here. All right. Ron says, correct, it's not time stamped. All right, I'm gonna continue on with the film. Give me 1 second.
And the people that were hired by the government. And I caught a shot to the face, and then that's about it.
Deputy Chief Waldo orders a second deployment of munitions.
6, I copy. I need more less than lethal teams over here. The indirect firing is not working. They are still not compliant. I've continued to give multiple warnings about chemical munitions being released. They are not dispersing.
Although Chief Waldo has broadcast over the radio twice that he has given warnings, no video that day captures these warnings. DC law on crowd dispersal procedures states that before any munitions are used against a crowd, officers must issue at least 3 clearly audible and understandable orders to disperse using an amplification system, as well as to provide participants reasonable and adequate time to disperse and a clear, safe route for dispersal. Just feet away, Benjamin Phillips fights for his life. He has been down on the ground and not breathing for 13 minutes.
1:30, where's the ambulance for this guy on the lower west?
President Trump is finishing his speech at the Ellipse at 1:12 p.m. In a rarely seen split-screen view, let's simultaneously see different events happening around the Capitol in real time.
So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I want to thank you all. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you all for being here. This is incredible. Thank you very much.
Ballot from Arizona.
Is the objection in writing and signed by a senator?
Yes, it is.
As Representative Paul Gosar and Senator Ted Cruz make a challenge on the floor of the House, MPD officer Daniel Thau arrives at the southwest section of the plaza. His body cam shows him and nearby officers spraying demonstrators with an inflammatory agent. From a different officer's body cam, the familiar face of Ray Epps can be seen in the area that the police are trying to control. Back in the real-time multi-view, we can see Trump waving to the crowd after his 1 hour and 11-minute speech, the last speech he will give in front of a crowd as President of the United States. Gosar and Cruz are having their objections to the electoral vote of Arizona read on the House floor. Ray Epps is at the front of the police line speaking to officers. At 1:13 p.m., Officer Thau is frantically calling for more munitions.
We need more munitions! Hey, Capitol! Hey, we need blast munitions. What do we got? I don't have any. We gotta get something, man. Come on, we gotta get
At 1:15 p.m., Officer Thau crosses the line and engages with demonstrators. As the scuffle ensues, he discharges 2 rounds from his taser, also known as an ECD.
2 ECD deployments. 2 ECD.
He then witnesses what he calls an APO, or an assault on a police officer.
APO, felony APO.
With 30 officers between him and the crowd, it's unclear what assault he thought he saw in that moment. A few hundred feet.
So, it's almost as if they just wanted to have certain audio on record to be able to say, oh, look, I saw an assault.
I think you nailed.
I'm sorry?
I said, as if. I think you nailed it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, what was the purpose of, why did that guy have to go into the crowd in the first place? It's not even as if people were trying to breach the barriers there at that point. Like, what did they need more blast ammunition is what I heard them say?
Yeah, they've shot everything. They need more. This crowd's out of control. When the crowd's standing there, that's when the Middletons were praying on the front line, and everybody was wondering why the cops kept attacking them. But you're right, they needed audio. They needed to look a certain way. They had cameramen in the crowd. They knew that it was for optics. They already had their wording. And this is the first time that I'm aware of that control of the Capitol was given from the Capitol Police to the Metro Police. I mean, there's protocol. You're supposed to have a Capitol Police officer with you if you're a Metro Police, even walking through the Capitol. And these people were given free reign, full control. That falls under the mayor as well, Bowser. You got to look into the bigger picture, and it's all coming together finally.
So the next comment says Mayor Bowser announced the curfew from 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. on the 7th. Okay.
Yeah. And she could have announced that we were breaking the law, that we should get off the property, that we should disperse, that we should do something other than what we were doing. But when she gave the announcement that there's a curfew, people that weren't seeing any violence thought that they could stay a little longer. Right. They thought, okay, this is cool. Okay, we know we have to be out by 6 and back at the room, but, I'll stay till 5:15. It's 45-minute walk. And they knew no better. And that's deceptive as well.
Well, that's exactly the nature of a setup. That's what this is, a setup. So, as if we needed more evidence of that. All right. Daniel, would you like to add anything before we continue?
I don't know. Another thing we talk about a lot is all the camera people who were there in advance and who already had gas masks. Mm-hmm. There were not very many of the protester patriots who thought to wear a gas mask. That's just, to me, a little bit suspicious.
Yeah.
But a lot of the journalists were thinking that they would need that for some reason. So who tipped them off about that? Or why did they think that? I don't know.
Premeditation of some kind on someone's behalf.
It just seems like it. It definitely seems like a setup. There's a lot of things that make me feel like it was a setup.
And a lot of them are pink, which is really strange when you see the same ones in places like Portland and Seattle. And we know that
it makes you wonder, is it just what they had at the store? Or are they all getting it from the same place? Are they coming from, I don't know. I don't really have the answers, but it is suspicious that a lot of them had those pink gas masks. And we've all seen the clip of Taylor Hanson saying, "Hey, I recognize you from Portland. You're Antifa, right?" And then there's the nod, and that person had a pink gas mask too. So, and also a lot of people realize that Antifa and journalists, often they're one and the same. And there's actually a known phrase, Antifa journalist.
Right. I believe that. All right, let's continue onwards.
Back on the northwest sidewalk, Benjamin Phillips has been loaded onto a makeshift stretcher and is being carried north to a waiting ambulance.
1:30, they're bringing the patient up to the ambulance right now. They are refusing to come down.
Tragically, Phillips would be pronounced dead at the hospital later that day. Benjamin Phillips leaves behind 2 teenage children. Back inside the Capitol building at 1:17 p.m., Vice President Mike Pence and senators returned to the Senate chamber to debate the electoral vote challenge put forth by Representative Paul Gosar. After expending all his munitions, Officer Thao yells at the officers on the west terrace of the Capitol above them to start shooting what they have into the crowd.
Damn it, we need that. Let's go! Shoot!
The less lethal team fires into the crowd for a third time. 3 minutes later, at 1:21 p.m., the first explosive munition of the day is discharged. The demonstrators at the West Plaza of the Capitol will be hit by an unrelenting barrage of grenades, incendiaries, rubber bullets, and gas for the next hour.
I won't pause long. But I had to pause to say, For an hour?
Yeah.
They were just dropping stuff on this crowd for an hour straight?
Yeah, they were. Also, the video's not shown for us anymore. I'm sure it is for the rest of the stream, but for me and David. But there's another thing I wanted to mention. So I don't know if I should wait till the next one, but I mean, it's not like spoilers. People know. So there's Phillips, and then there's Benjamin Phillips and Kevin Greason. They both died during that time in that area. But the emergency services. Now, David, tell me, is this for both of them or for one of them? They didn't want to help because they didn't want to come in there in time or whatever because they were worried about getting COVID, or they were worried about, or was that even, maybe that was just for sickness, but I thought it was for one or both of those. And then also maybe just worried about the crowd.
No, what happened is with COVID scare, that was on the CPR for, I believe, Phillips, because that was from Chris Albert. Yeah, from Chris Alberts. And the paramedics, if you heard in that clip, the officer plainly says the paramedics refused to come in and render aid. They refused. They let that man die on the concrete. Benjamin Phillips may have survived if he had gotten proper medical care, but for 15 minutes, they forced him to lay on the concrete. This is the part people don't know, until the people picked him up on a barricade and carried him to the ambulance, at which point they put him in the ambulance, and another person banged on the door and said, "We have a heart attack in the crowd." And they said, "No, he's in the ambulance." They said, "No, another one." There was confusion, but they flat refused to go and render aid to Benjamin Phillips. And Kevin Greason, they did send some medics down with a stretcher to get him out, but they didn't for Phillips. Just a little side note.
Yeah, I thought you would be better at answering that than me, but it's something I think people should know about, so wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thank you guys for that, and we'll go. Let me add it back for you guys. Make sure you can see it too.
Hey, wait just a second before you go.
Yes.
Does the crowd remember? They told us Benjamin Phillips wasn't even a part of the mob. He wasn't there. He was parking the bus. He had a stroke somewhere on the sidewalk. And that's what they said. He had a stroke somewhere on the sidewalk. He wasn't a part of the violent event or blah, blah, blah. But he was there. I mean, he's right there on the concrete. They tried to basically hide the story from the public to see the causation or anything around the circumstances of his death. And that he was there and he was, upset, riled up. But that's another one of the lies that tried to cover all these deaths and say that, for instance, that Kevin Greason had tased himself in his pocket, to death. And that's being polite. And that's not what they were when they said it. So, it's horrible stuff. Roseanne Boylan died of a methamphetamine overdose. You'll see with your own eyes that she did not have an overdose. So when you think about Greason and the fact that now we had identified him January of 22, we got another angle and it was the stretcher of Greason. I was like, wait a minute, what is this medical stretcher we've never seen in the crowd? And so we looked and of course, Kevin Greason had brown shoes. So we looked at the other man being carried out on the barricade. One was Derek Vargo, and another one that happened earlier, of course, was Benjamin Phillips. And we looked at his shoes, and they were black and red, I believe. And that was the difference because he looks a lot like Kevin Greason. So in many of the montage videos for the first year, it showed Greason and Phillips in the same video like it was the same guy. And everybody kind of believed and not out of any intent, but we all thought it was the same guy. And we never thought twice about it because they said Benjamin Phillips wasn't even there. So we're all like, well, that's Greason then. And that's part of the confusion that we had to figure out. So January 22, we figured out who Benjamin Phillips was.
Yep.
All right.
Well, let me just say one more thing. We see him kind of holding his phone up, probably taking a video or something. I've never seen that video. So I wonder if that's available somewhere. I wonder if the government has it. I wonder if the family has it.
Oh, I'm sure the government has it. There's almost no way.
And But secondly, we see that video. He walks into the frame on that one overhead camera.
Mm-hmm.
But if anyone has video of what happened right before that, I'd be very interested to see if there's any more to the story.
Yeah.
Because, we just kind of are guessing, like he must have run up, maybe all the excitement, had a heart attack. We don't know.
And that's
the reason when he's having his incident and his medical episode, grenades are going off all around him around that time. So that maybe lended to that one. But for this one, what was happening? If anyone has that info, we want to know.
This is what we're going to say. Look, everybody get your pen or paper or notes or something. And these are 2 timestamps that if you have any video around, the first would be 12:55 to 1 on the west side, on the northwest corner where he's turning around the sidewalk. And that's when the crowd first goes through the gate, first goes up to the left side.
Final gate.
Yep, the final one with
scaffolding.
With Samsel and Epps. And then when they go through and walk up that sidewalk, we need all that footage all the way to the front left side. And then the second timestamp is going to be from 1:17, 18, 19, like 1:19 to 1:21. And that's where Kevin Greason goes down. And we need more camera footage from just north of the, what are we calling that? The tower, in the middle, Daniel? The
media tower.
Yeah, the media tower. So, anything just north of that at the concrete barrier is where Kevin Greason goes down. But those timestamps, so anywhere around 12:55 to 1 on the front northwest around the sidewalk where it turns around the corner, or, around 1:19, 1:20, 1:21 at the west side there by the media tower. Please, if y'all have anything, tips at stophate.com. Send us a message and we'll get with you and figure out how to get it.
All right. I'm going to definitely include that later in sharing as well. So let's keep going.
Put it down, finish back!
Hey, fire! Hey, you're fire, fire! Hey, you good, you good? Hey, you fire! That was fire!
We got another individual down. People are doing CPR. DC5 response to this area. Take that.
At 1:28 p.m., a man has collapsed on the West Plaza and is attended to by people in the crowd.
They can't get anybody in here, and the cops are throwing flashbangs into the crowd.
He is unresponsive for several minutes. Fearing the risk of trampling, they carry him to a different location where they continue to try to resuscitate him.
He's having a heart attack. He's been on the ground for 6 minutes. They carried him. They've been doing CPR. I think that man probably died. I hope they saved his life.
Kevin Greason leaves behind a wife and 5 children. Around 1:30 p.m., on the southwest side of the plaza, officers push the crowd back and are able to establish a police line again. The police will hold this line for about an hour. Just inside the Capitol, Representative Zoe Lofgren, Democrat from California, is responding to the challenge of the electoral count.
The votes are simply to be counted as certified and transmitted by the states.
At 1:32 p.m., an officer laments that chucking grenades into the crowd is just going to make things worse.
It's just gonna make it worse. Hey, stop! Hold fire! Hold fire! Hey! Hold fire! Hold fire! Jimmy, hold!
Moments later, the same officer seems to have changed his mind and is actively searching for munitions to discharge in the crowd.
I'm coming out with smoke.
A burner, or hot burning smoke grenade, can get extremely hot and become a fire risk.
They come back with it? Hey, do they throw it back? Okay.
The smoke grenade is tossed back behind the police line by someone in the crowd.
Eric, do we have any scout rounds?
Officer Thao goes back for more rounds. This time it's a CS gas canister.
I need triple chasers.
A triple chaser consists of 3 separate canisters pressed together with separating charges between each. When deployed, the canisters separate and land approximately 20 feet apart, allowing increased area coverage. After not receiving approval to use the triple chaser, Officer Thao appears to be reprimanded by another officer for his use of smoke moments earlier.
I got a triple chaser on hand. Yeah. I know, but this is a triple chaser. I know, but just listen. I mean, we got better.
Another captain tells Officer Thao to hold on discharging CS gas into the crowd. At around this same time, Ray Epps is once again caught from multiple cameras being at the front line of the demonstrators near police barricades. No other person has been seen at this many flashpoints, this many times. He walks freely up and down the police barricades multiple times, communicating with other demonstrators in a similar fashion to when we saw him whisper in Ryan Samsel's ear earlier, before the first breach. At 1:38 p.m., Donald Trump sends his first tweet after walking off the stage 24 minutes earlier. It reads, "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful." Around 1:40 p.m., Ray Epps is one of the members of the crowd who helps lift up a large Trump sign and push it into the line of police officers on the West Plaza of the Capitol. At 1:41 p.m., body cam footage from Officer Anthony Aliotto records a discussion about the dangers of using CS gas in their situation. The officer petitions not to have Robert Glover, the on-scene commander, authorize use of CS gas in the area.
But what I'm saying is, do not let Glover authorize CS. It'll just happen.
8 minutes later, at 1:49 p.m., a riot is officially declared at the U.S. Capitol.
I'm gonna try to get compliance, but this is now effectively a riot. 49 hours declaring it a riot.
So even as they're officially saying, look over here, this is a riot, look over here, this is a riot, there's no, like, the crowd is just standing there waving their flags. There's no, it doesn't, I would describe, like, normally in a riot situation, or at least from footage that I've seen and from firsthand accounts that I've seen when we've gone to rallies and people have started fights or whatever, it kind of breaks out into sort of something that would resemble like a mosh pit, but these people are just standing there.
Well, I think
and even when you see them get into fights or the police start like throwing grenades or shooting people, like they calm down very fast. Like the anger subsides very quickly. There's a lot of restraint shown by these protesters. I mean, from what I've seen. I mean, do you agree, David?
Absolutely. I've bragged on this crowd 1,000 times because they could have annihilated all these police for the way they were treating them, and they didn't. And, we always say the police were outnumbered. Well, absolutely. So who controlled the crowd? The crowd did. And like Daniel said, they would reset. They would go back to kind of, they were angry, but they weren't violent. And they've always been depicted as a violent mob. No, but they were angry and had every right to be. And that's, I think, the other point that people miss. But a couple of things to take away. You look at the way they were using these munitions. When you throw them into the middle of a crowd, the crowd disperses in 360 degrees. They're running away from whatever just happened in every direction, which pushes some of them toward the police line itself. And when they said, don't use CS gas, when the police use the CS gas and they start running for air, the protesters that were standing in front of them, they start following the police. Why? Because they're looking for air as well, and there's no place to get anywhere they're standing, just like the police who are fleeing that area to try to breathe. It's a scary thing when you can't breathe. And I just want people to understand that the police weren't worried about hurting the protesters. They were worried about hurting themselves with the wind. Every time they talk about it, except the one where he said, hey, we're hurting 10 of them, or we're hurting one and making 10 more angry. All the other times it's like, we shouldn't use that because we'll hurt ourselves. The wind isn't in our favor. But they knew it was pain compliance on a peaceful crowd. But they had, like I said, their optics, their photographers. They needed this big flash and bang and smoke. And then an hour after they started attacking the crowd, they finally declared it a riot. But I think this is the first time that you can really call it a police riot, because the police were the ones rioting against these peaceful protesters. Mm-hmm. And the protesters never would respond the way that everyone thought they would. And we'll get into the racist elements of the crowd in a little while, but I want you to kind of put that in the back of your mind, that there was some major prejudice going on at this time. There was some fear and some ignorance that was happening amongst these policemen towards the crowd that pushed on this kind of action toward these peaceful people, because they were scared that they were someone who they weren't. And I
think we should point out that like many of these grenades were tossed like way behind the police line. So for one thing, like those people are just standing around, but for another thing, like where do you want those people to go? Because they're going to go in every direction from the explosion. That means you're pushing people towards yourself. Like that's obviously not a very smart move on the, what's the goal here? If the goal is just piss everyone off, then yeah, it's super smart.
Well, the goal is to make some people the goal is to make some people run toward the police line, so it looks like they're attacking the police when they're actually running for their lives or trying to breathe, or all of the above.
Exactly. I mean, is that the goal? Are they just really just trying? I mean, everything else points to this was a setup. So were they in on it? These people who were tossing and launching grenades into the middle of the peaceful crowd, were they in on this setup?
I'd say it's at least possible that a good bunch of them were. Because you see the guy talking about, they seem really trigger happy. They seem really excited at the prospect of throwing in more munitions into this crowd.
Especially Fao and Edwards.
Yeah, and that's really weird. It's really scary, especially because you see how few of them there are. So why would one of these officers be so excited to throw all of these grenades and everything into a crowd that not only outnumbered them by like an astronomical amount if they were really scared of them, but also when they had such few police presence in the first place?
Well, with police walking through the crowd continuously, there wasn't a time when there wasn't interaction with the crowd by police that wasn't peaceful. I mean, they let rows and rows of policemen file through to the front so they could help reinforce or do whatever they needed to do, and there was no violence in the crowd. And when they leave the area, the police as well, no one's chasing them down from behind and beating them down and all that. And then you look at the number of injuries, and I want y'all to pay attention when these big plumes of smoke and gas go off and all these police clear themselves out with their own munitions. Count and think how many policemen were just injured by the police, because all those injuries were also blamed on J6ers. All those injuries. So you might have 120 of those policemen that gassed themselves. 140 policemen were injured that day. Well, we only did 20 of them. The rest is on y'all, or whatever the real numbers are. But it's going to be something like that, because we weren't there for that. And when people see this violence, you have to understand it's self-defense. When people are being attacked, and like Mickey always says, Ashley's mom, these police acted with impunity. That means they could beat, kill, slay, maim, do whatever, and there's no repercussions for them, no questions, no big deal, no charges, objectively reasonable. So this is the actions of those police that the people witnessed that day and suffered through, that has never gotten out to the public.
And I wonder if they knew that going into it. Did they have a briefing? Hey, you guys can just beat the crap out of these people and nothing will happen. Did they tell them that in advance?
Yes, I believe at some point, in my opinion, because of the one affidavit that talks about Lila Morris wanting to beat the F out of those Trumpers if they go to the Capitol. Well, they came up, the other police officers supposedly came up to her and said, hey, what's going on? And she said, the plan changed. Wait a minute, there was a plan. And they said, well, what's the plan? Well, we're not supposed to beat the Trumpers. Oh, you were supposed to beat the Trumpers? We're supposed to beat the anti-Trumpers. Oh, well, who is that? Well, I don't even know. But if I have to go to the Capitol, I'm going to beat the F out of those Trumpers. Well, you see how much, maybe there were more plans than we're aware of. Maybe it was just the MPD that was in on the beatdown plans, and the Capitol Police, like we thought, were seriously duped and put in a really bad spot. And maybe only a couple of the Capitol Police were aware of the plan, and maybe only a couple of the Metro, but somehow they knew to pick Lila Morris for the Super Bowl and Hodges and Fanone. All these key players were already lined up. They knew had done the most horrid things, or were going to be in the HBO movie, or helped kill Roseanne Boylan, and all these things. So it all fits together like a real setup, psyop, false flag, whatever you want to call it. But it does not seem organic in the least, especially when you find out how many agents were actually in the crowd. And we still don't have full numbers on that because there were so many different crews of FBI cells that they could not keep up with themselves. So there's much more to dig into, folks.
Yeah, and Edwards and Thau and Morris were all DC Metro, as far as I know.
Insane. Truly insane. All right. Let me put this back up.
Fears of Officer Alioto are soon realized when at 1:50 p.m. officers use CS gas on the northwest side of the plaza and effectively gas themselves with aid from the wind. You can see multiple officers struggling from the effects of the CS gas.
Tina, be careful. It's blowing right back.
I know.
So
it's in my eye. You okay?
Yeah.
Don't rub it. You know that.
Over on the east side of the Capitol, the gates have successfully held the crowd back for over an hour from when the west side was first breached. At 1:59 p.m., that all changes. The demonstrators overpower the police and begin to make their way toward the east steps.
Police are squabbling with protesters. Oh, there we go. And they just reached the Capitol again.
Back on the northwest side of the Capitol.
Yeah, what was that?
So that's one of the scenes that we showed in our first documentary, Writing History with a R, writing. And it shows the crowd on the east side. And they say that they're squabbling with protesters, but it's not really a push and shove against cops as much as it is just control of that gate. And when that guy is standing there on this side of the police, behind the police, and waving people in, it just shows you there were already people inside behind the police. They weren't in danger. And I've showed Daniel, we've looked at this, it's hilarious. If you pan just to the right, you'll see literally ladies standing behind the police on the right with McDonald's cups, like they're just sightseers looking around. And this guy that's talking in that video, they're squabbling with, there's people standing next to the cameraman's in there himself. So it's not like that was a new breach. It was just, well, everybody's going in, we're just going to let them in here too. And that's literally what happened. It wasn't a huge fight. And, it's all perception and knowing where these things happen and how they fit into the big picture. And that's what this timeline movie kind of helps to do for people.
Yeah, and if you look at different angles, you'll see that the police and the protesters were working together to basically remove those barricades, and then the police were falling back and the crowds were following them. And they were doing that right there and also on the like that was the northern edge of the east side. They were doing that also on like just the east, like in the middle. And that was over by there where there was a little stage and you had like a makeshift stage where you had what's his name? Pastor I forget his name. Dunphy, yeah. And Pam Hemphill, MAGA Granny, she actually was the one in the very front pushing forward, going through that first gate. And, it was like a flimsy little gate that they kind of just knocked over and walked through. So, yeah.
And it was violent. It was not violent like it was on the west side. It was nothing like the tunnel. it was more of a negotiation. From what we can see now, they might have pushed on the gate in places, but the other policemen, you can see them in the videos waving at the other cops saying, come on, let's back up.
Right.
They're taking it. Now, a lot of people think he's waving at the crowd, but I think he's waving at another cop saying, we're falling back.
Yeah.
Hey,
if you look from another angle, you'll see.
Yeah.
And like, also, if you look from another angle, you'll see at that first breach, that one right there that he was facing at, just a little bit to the right of that, so a little bit south, then you would see another person removing some of those gates is a guy called #MaroonProudBoy. And that guy was also at the very front of the first breach on the left. He went left when Samsel was going forward. So he kind of went around the building. And so he was there at the beginning of those first two. So that's just another interesting little factoid that, people could notice.
It is interesting to watch these things over and over and pick up on certain people and see the different points they're at. Another one is Zachary Alam. You'll see him, throughout a lot of J6 footage in critical places at wrong place, right time for us to catch him. He's the one that was breaking the glass out in front of Ashley before she was shot. So he's also in other critical points. But, just watch this stuff like a study film and see what you can see. And like I said earlier, anybody finds anything, tips@stophate.com. We're happy to take information and use it for the benefit of the J6ers.
Absolutely. And continue to send in comments and questions to the chat. We'll keep an eye on that as we continue on.
A man named Derek Vargo is ascending to the west terrace on the outside railing of the stairway. He is sprayed in the eyes with an inflammatory agent. Vargo reacts by heading back down the way he came when he is shoved off the wall by Officer Bryant Williams, leading to a 25-foot drop. Some will call this an attempted murder. Vargo is carried away on a makeshift stretcher by officers and bystanders. Vargo suffered a fractured ankle and extensive mid-foot injuries that would require surgeries to repair. He lives with constant foot pain in the middle of his spine, and suffers from post-traumatic stress. He lives with constant foot pain in the middle of his spine, and suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder that causes him flashbacks and nightmares of being pushed off the railing. At 2:03 p.m., the first dispersal order is heard coming from a mobile LRAD, or long-range acoustic device.
Official code 22-1307. All people must leave.
DC law requires police to give 3 separate warning with the LRAD system and an opportunity to disperse before using violence or munitions to clear a protest crowd. At 2:06 p.m., police retreat up the east steps of the Capitol. Demonstrators soon follow and ascend the steps. We hear the LRAD again at 2:07 p.m.
Failure to comply with this order may subject you to arrest.
It's unlikely that demonstrators heard either of these warnings given the situation on the plaza, which calls into question the earlier stated DC law that requires these announcements to be clearly audible and to provide participants reasonable and adequate time to disperse. Back on the east side of the Capitol at 2:09 p.m., Hunter Emke is seen kicking in and punching multiple windows. He is quickly tackled and detained by police. At 2:10 p.m., demonstrators reach the West Terrace and push through police barricades.
Just stopping. I was just stopping to point out that, like, as this guy's, like, kicking this window in, nobody's helping him. Like, nobody's running to this guy.
Yeah, and actually, he was being filmed by a couple people, including Ryan Zink, right?
Yes, Ryan Zink, absolutely.
And Bobby Powell was there, and he noticed that the police came. Well, also, they handcuffed this guy, and then they released him. He was later, arrested and took a plea deal and had a very short sentence, which I think he's already done with. But anyways, that guy's wearing all black, very suspicious. If anyone knows him, is this guy a Trump supporter? Let us know. We asked that a long time ago. I've never heard. But obviously the other Trump supporters around there were not supporting that. But then the police, they must have heard on the radio or something, they walked away and left that broken window unguarded. And then, and Bobby Powell was covering all of this, there was this other guy, these other characters who seemed like they might be feds who were kind of walking up and acting weird, right? I mean, do you want to kind of describe that behavior a little, David?
Yeah, you had one guy dressed really Fed-like, come up and start peeling a window out. And another MAGA Trump supporter type comes up and says, "Hey, dude, quit doing that." And the guy reacts very violently, shoves him around, and everybody's
tries to
like,
make it seem like the other guy was the one doing it.
Yeah, like trying to get the MAGA guy walked up, What?
But hey, to this day, we don't know who that is, do we?
No, we don't. And back to
I don't know. Maybe Bobby Powell knows.
Yeah, the window kicking. Ryan Zink was filming, and he worked with the police. They said, "Hey, film some of these agitators around here for us." And then after that all happened, Ryan left the property. He didn't go inside. He didn't do anything. And I forget how long Ryan Zink's sentence is, but he just went through his case not long ago. And
now he's running for office.
Now he is running for office, and we need more J6ers to do that as well.
Exactly. Well, you got Derek Evans too.
Yeah, we got a list going up on our website. Chansley is running.
Well, wasn't Derek the only elected person who was there that day?
I don't think so. There were multiple.
Well, he was. It went inside, I think, that was charged.
Mm-hmm. He was the only one. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was remembering. We got 2 more comments. Mayor Bowser's emergency test at 2:50 on January 6, 2021. 1 hour and 50 minutes too late. The hashtag J6 plan, hashtag J6 emergency text.
Yeah. Agreed.
Absolutely. That's a true story.
All right, let's get back to it.
Why even have the curfew? Go on.
Yeah, no, I was wondering the same thing, honestly.
I know why. We'll talk about that later.
Okay, yeah, leave them in some suspense.
They will quickly move to what will become the first points of entry to the interior of the Capitol. A man throws a 2x4 through a glass pane, the first such broken window on the west side of the Capitol. Shortly thereafter, Dominic Pizzola pushes the window in using a police riot shield. Protesters will soon enter the building through these breach points. At 2:12, Ray Epps sends a text message to his nephew, telling him that he orchestrated the protest at the Capitol and that he helped get people there. The video evidence we have seen thus far would back up his claim. At 2:13 p.m., President Trump tweets, "I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you."
Hey! Frank, you got anything else?
Back on the West Plaza of the Capitol, Officer Thao receives a Stinger 40mm, 60 caliber rubber balls round and rushes to fire it into the crowd. This crowd management round contains approximately 18 rubber balls.
Hey, I need a round. You have CS?
30 seconds later, he's given a baton round, a round that contains 3 40mm rubber projectiles. He again heads over to the police line to fire it into the crowd. At 2:18 p.m., after a few minutes of confusion inside the room, the House calls a recess during its debate over an objection to the electoral votes from Arizona.
Without objection, the chair declares the House in recess pursuant to Clause 12B of Rule 1.
At 2:16 p.m., the parliamentarian doors are opened from the inside, providing another access point for demonstrators to enter the building. Down on the West Plaza, Officer Thao refers to police activity as, quote, shooting zombies.
Do we know who opened that door from the inside?
Somebody might.
We're They took me inside? They're inside. Okay, well, we need to get those out of here. All right, we're completely surrounded.
At 2:18 p.m. after a few minutes.
That's a really weird reaction to being surrounded by an angry mob. Laughing about it?
That's very telling, and I don't want to hear that guy killed himself. He's one of the cops that, what I'm saying, was so traumatized. I mean, if he's laughing, being on the front line about being surrounded, what drove these other guys? What position were they in? Where were their lives in danger? You know what I'm saying? This is crazy. It makes you wonder about some of those following deaths that we hear about.
Well, even the cops around him don't really seem very concerned. Like they are surrounded, but like you don't see the telltale signs of concern or panic. And even I nervous laugh, but that wasn't a nervous laugh. I can't say with any certainty, but that sounded like a ha 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 kind of laugh to me. I don't know.
Well, bear in mind he was a white cop. So he knew there was nothing to be scared of because he's a white cop. So he knew there was nothing to really be scared of. He's just having fun to that point, if you ask me. And he's like, ha, 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 yeah, we're surrounded. Oh, well,
Yeah, it's a game. It sounds like it's a game to them because they know what they're doing it for. They know the purpose of it, so they don't seem too worried.
So I guess what you're alluding to is that the black cops thought that Trump supporters are white supremacists, so they felt more in danger.
That's exactly right. They had a real fear with ignorance, man. You get all kinds of hatred, and that's what they had a real fear because they take the bait, man. They listen to the media, they listen to the politicians. Oh, it's a violent mob. No, it wasn't. And listen, they were not prepared for white people to yell at them. It just totally their psyche. They're like, they yelled at me, they want to kill me, and that's just as far from the truth. It's laughable from over here, but that day it definitely wasn't because they thought that we really wanted to do them irreparable harm or kill them or whatever. And they did a lot of harm to the J6ers that day. And it's not solely based on color by any means, but I would say that probably played into the fear levels. And I think that one guy laughing about it kind of gives you an example of that, for free.
Yeah, well, I mean, racial tensions had only been building and building and building over the last several years prior to that with all of the riots and, the George Floyds and all these other incidents and, actual riots leading up to this event, so.
Well, not too far back in 2019, we did a rally there in D.C., and I made friends with one of the black security guards at the hotel, and we talked for days. And I asked him, what do you think about the upcoming rally? He said, it's a bunch of white supremacists. And I said, do you think I'm a white supremacist? He said, no, man. I said, well, it's my rally. He said, what's going on here? I said, this is what they tell you. And then after the rally, after it was peaceful, after it was a free speech event, he saw how Antifa actually treated us. And he said, man, you got to explain this to me. And that's how we do it, one at a time. And I think this movie does it in such a bigger way to kind of break that narrative and show the truth.
Well, that's why I'm hoping that everybody is sharing this film, and I encourage everybody to share this as we're, people can come in and ask questions and share their thoughts, and we've got quite a bit left, so let's dive right back into it.
Confusion inside the room, the House calls a recess during its debate over an objection to the electoral votes from Arizona.
Without objection, the chair declares the House in recess pursuant to Clause 12B of Rule 1.
At 2:18 p.m., police body cam picks up a tense conversation among officers, where one officer admits that they're hitting innocent people.
Nothing's going to help.
The wind is at us. I know. Right. The wind's at us. And we get hit with a lot of pain compliance when you hit innocent people.
And not only that, we're taking out one and 10 of them are getting angrier. We're multiplying them by hitting them.
At 2:24 p.m., John Earl Sullivan is recording as he is one of the first of the demonstrators to enter the Capitol Rotunda.
2021, y'all. This
What is this? What is life?
At the same time, a few blocks away, MPD officers are discussing new plans to enter the Capitol to support U.S. Capitol Police.
They're gonna burn that building down.
That's fine. Maybe we'll figure it out. All right.
They better reach out to the military right now. Is what they better do. Get the National Guard suited up. Get them down here.
You know we're suiting up. We're going in.
We are?
Yes.
When?
Damn.
Right
You didn't
now.
hear that?
Still at 2:24 p.m., Mike Pence has moved from the Senate chamber to his office across the hall. The Senate remains in session as Senator for Kentucky Mitch McConnell speaks on the floor. Also, at 2:24 p.m., President Trump tweets, "Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth." This would be a significant tweet to the January 6th committee, for they claim that it was the motivation for a surge into the Capitol complex.
Our investigation found that immediately after the president's 2:24 p.m. tweet, the crowds both outside the Capitol and inside the Capitol surged.
What the January 6th committee failed to mention was that it was officers misusing munitions and CS gas at that same time that led to a surge.
Hey, Rich. Put it up.
Just a convenient narrative cover-up. That's this. How can, at this stage, especially, we'll talk about just watching this. If we'll pretend that this kind of information hasn't been available. How can you not see that this is a setup? What kind of logical brain could look at all of this undeniable evidence and say anything other than this is a setup?
You can't if you're normal, I guess, but it's crazy. It's even deeper than that, folks. The Select Committee said that people were on megaphones right now reading the tweet to the crowd, and that's what made the crowd surge at 2:24. But they use a video from 4:17, and they completely lie. And it's in the Select Committee hearings. It's in a suit in Colorado with Trennis Evans from Condemned USA. And it's in the Biden campaign video with Trennis on that megaphone as well. So it's a huge story that's breaking, I guess, more and more every day. But it's a lie to cover up the bad actions of the police and to blame it on not only the crowd for surging, but blame it on Trump to keep him off the ballot, to keep him, all these things. And it's just all loose. It's beautiful.
And I had written this down as a question myself earlier. Weren't people who were there, by and large, expecting that Trump was going to be showing up to give some kind of a speech? Or at least to, appear?
Yeah, I mean, he said he was coming. I mean, we all watched that speech.
Yeah, he absolutely said, I'll be down there. We're going to march down to the Capitol. And we didn't know where. And, when the police weren't there to tell you where, you just go down where everybody else is and you stand and wait. And then when the police start throwing stuff, you're like, whoa. And then you hear the crowd react in patriotic shouts of, hey, we're not here for that kind of shouts, And then it just continues for an hour and you're like, what's going on? And, I'm not getting close to that if I'm not stuck in the middle of it. And that's, far from what the Select Committee tells anyone.
And I'm sort of playing in my head the narrative that they have been running about riots leading up to that point, saying mostly peaceful. And I wonder if that narrative was to set up right-wing people so that when they turned around and tried to say that this was actually mostly peaceful, they would say, oh, well, now you're just trying to take a page out of our book. You're just trying to say, the things that we've been saying. I wonder if it was premeditated to that degree. That's just where my mind goes.
No, it's exactly right, because this was a violent mob. That's what they want people to think. It was a violent mob when it wasn't. And that's really the word.
In no other riot. I've seen a lot. I mean, I've seen riots in person. I've seen riots on footage. And whenever I've never seen in a riot situation or in a situation where there's like a protest, after the first person gets hurt, that's when everything breaks loose. That's usually the trigger point. But that even wasn't the case here. Several times, over and over, people getting hurt, people falling, people getting shot, people getting tear gas, people getting hit with, you know, these grenades. It's not doing it. What, you know? This violent group of insurrectionists cannot be triggered into violence.
Well, you're absolutely right, Kim. It's beautiful. And correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel. I think it was the Washington Post had a reporter in the crowd. And when Kevin Greason was being tended to by those paramedics, they commented that protesters are saying this is the first fallen or the first, first fallen. And I think they expected the crowd to, you know, feed off of that as well and to get violent and get more angry than it was. And
right, it's
and
like
it just
they wanted that.
Yeah. It was almost scripted. It's very strange.
All right, well, there's just so many points here that are so incredible, and your guys' team is so great. Everybody make sure that you're following Stop Hate. Help Stop Hate on Twitter. X, whatever you're going to call it.
DC MPD Officer Cowrie, at the urging of Officer Thau, misfires a CS gas canister that eventually forces police to fall back and lose their position.
Record this, I don't have my let's go!
As officers on the West Plaza, unequipped with gas masks, struggle breathing, the plume of CS gas can be seen from the overhead camera on the lower right corner of your screen. It blows over the entire area of the West Plaza that the police had secured for nearly an hour. Within 3 minutes of the officer's CS gas misfire, the police line on the West Plaza entirely collapses. Back on the east side at 2:24 p.m., demonstrators are able to force open doors from the inside. These are the Columbus doors, which lead a short way to the rotunda of the Capitol. Back outside on the West Plaza, an elderly woman is violently pushed by police down a set of concrete stairs 3 times, which incites the crowd around her.
Did you hear that? We're trying to make it to Botanical Gardens. We're going in.
Alright. We down in long guns? What do we?
Yes. Straight up. Any munitions you have, CDU.
At 2:28 p.m., in an interesting exchange, a press photographer on scene at the east entrance of the Capitol taps a demonstrator on his hip and shoulder to move him out of the way so he can presumably get a better shot of the action. Back out on the south side of the West Plaza, a demonstrator is taken down by 6 police officers. He receives multiple punches while in a face-down, prone position. At 2:30 p.m., a security camera at the crypt lobby shows demonstrators gaining access to the Capitol via overhead lift doors. At this same time, the House is called into final recess.
Without objection, the House is going to go back into recess.
At 2:31 p.m., Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser orders a curfew from 6 p.m. that evening to 6 a.m. the following morning. At 2:33 p.m., a frustrated police officer can be heard venting about being, in his words, set up.
They set us up. That's what they did. They set us up. They set up 64. Oh, absolutely. And then they asked y'all to come 2 hours later. They set us up. They needed everybody right away. Nah, right away. They set us up. So now we ain't got. We ain't got a mother. They set us up. Take this one.
I'm gonna be as real as I can be. We are going to get overrun on the steps of the Capitol right now. We're getting hammered, okay? If you guys go down there, the bank compliance is working very minimally. There's 10,000 to 1. We're gonna lose the steps, and we're getting people hurt like a mother.
Demonstrators are seen entering from the west side of the Capitol, while police officers watch them walk through the doors. Just feet away at 2:35 p.m., minutes after losing the West Plaza, Officer Alioto throws a gas canister from the West Terrace into the crowd that has amassed on the West Plaza. This, along with other gas canisters sent into the crowds, gets thrown back at the officers. Most of these officers still do not have gas masks. At the same time on the West Terrace, officers are repeating the same mistakes they made one level lower on the West Plaza. An errant CS gas round is again fired into their held position on the West Terrace. The spreading gas will eventually effectuate a retreat back into the Capitol through a narrow tunnel. This mistake would prove to be incredibly significant for the events that are yet to come. The retreat into the Capitol through the West Terrace tunnel would create the conditions for the next standoff between demonstrators and police that would take place over the following hours. Instead of showing force outside of the tunnel, the police make the questionable decision of barricading themselves behind locked double doors, giving up the tactical position, and retreating to a defensive posture. At 2:39 p.m., Metropolitan Police Department reinforcements arrive at the Capitol, entering through the east carriage door. At the same time, police officers discuss being unprepared for what they encountered.
I didn't know we were coming up for this. I would have made sure we all had our masks.
I didn't realize how bad. They set us up to fail.
They did.
There was no way we were winning that. And now you got at least 4 platoons that are just gassed out.
Yeah, literally.
Because us, 54 doesn't have masks.
Yeah. Well, remember, we're supposed to be rapid response just to buy time for the hard platoons to come.
They didn't come. They didn't ask for them.
Who cares about the street? Like, prioritize.
Secure the Capitol.
So again, this is more, this is a setup. Nobody's coming. Nobody's helping. We weren't given any proper warning or any proper preparation. They set us up like that. The one guy in the beginning, let them take this MFer,
Exactly, and this poor guy at the end, prioritize. He can't even say prioritize.
Prioritize.
It's so, and that is not Officer Sicknick. That guy did not have a stroke. That was not stroke spray. But yeah, it's really kind of telling to hear the policeman's version of what they were experiencing. And you see all the retreat. You see how many officers were gassed because of their own actions. Every one of those injuries was blamed on the J6 violent mob. When the police were the ones that were violent, they attacked the crowd over an hour before it was declared a riot. They used all these munitions improperly. They didn't give warning. They didn't give exits. They didn't use the speakers. They didn't use the text. They didn't do anything right. And they want to hold us responsible for all their misdeeds. And I think that's what they sold to the public.
Well, there's a couple other things too. Maybe we should have mentioned earlier, like when Joshua Matthew Black got shot in the cheek, that was, we believe, an expired marking round. So it was supposed to be like a powdery puff of smoke or something like that, right, David? And then it had hardened, so it went right through and penetrated and just blood everywhere.
That's right. It was supposed to be yellow like a marking round, like you would imagine paintball, almost a paintball gun to put up.
And then what was the thing about the... what do you call it? Armor or whatever. What do you call it?
Well, as far as the shield,
the clothes they wear, that's hard. It's armor. We'll call it armor.
Yeah.
Was something about that where they didn't have it prepared, they moved it, or it was?
Well, a lot of their armament was locked in vans, I guess, or in storage, for lack of a better way to put it. And of course, their helmets. So the Capitol Police's helmets. I think it was Tarek Johnson said that they had recalled them. They had taken everyone's helmets up. The helmets had expired, and they had not given out the new helmets just yet. So, I mean, all these things add up to being underprepared, understaffed, under-equipped, informed, and underprepared, in intentional ways. All the staff that was off that day, everybody that was given a day off, and the skeleton staff and the excuses. But we see the retreat. We see the pain compliance used on this crowd in improper, illegal ways. And you see this crowd, literally, you've heard the phrase fish in a barrel, and I'll be real quick, but all the crowd was in that big section on the lower West Terrace, not hurting anyone. There were no police down there. The police are on top and decide to throw gas down into that crowd. For what reason? To hurt people, to make them hurt each other, to stampede them and make them trample each other? I can't figure it out, because that's not what you're supposed to do. And they're doing it anyway, like just inflicting pain on those people down there. Grandmas, kids, old, elderly people. I mean, dogs in the crowd, video after video, children, strollers even. And if people weren't expecting that kind of action at that point, you wouldn't know not to bring your dog. And the police, caught in a bad spot or some intentional, we'll find out.
All right. I'll put it back on.
At 2:42 p.m., journalist Taylor Hansen is walking behind Ashley Babbitt, an Air Force veteran from California, as she turns a corner and approaches the speaker's lobby, guarded by 3 police officers. MPD officer Luke Foskett approaches a window and looks out upon the crowd on the western side of the Capitol building.
You're live, right? Yeah.
Moments later, members of the House seek shelter in the gallery while officers barricade entry into the chamber. It is at this moment that the only firearm to be discharged inside the Capitol that day can be loudly heard. The story of that gunshot is quite possibly the most tragic story of that day. The shot heard was a single round fired by Lieutenant Michael Byrd. It strikes Ashley Babbitt in the neck, and she falls back into the upper landing of the stairwell.
He's trying to go right in the She's done. She's dead. She's dead. She's dead.
One shot in the Capitol. Report of a shooting in the Capitol. Trying to ascertain information now.
That's an important pause point. For a lot of reasons. One being the Jaden X perspective of that, which I'm sure you guys are intimately familiar with, that we reported on over at National File with the assistance of Patrick Howley and Alicia Powell. Sorry, it's very hard not to cry talking about this stuff. The Jaden X's brother is on record saying that the guy Jaden X was taking responsibility for the premeditation of Ashley Babbitt's murder, and he was right up in there as I understand. Do you guys know more about that, or do you want to elaborate on that?
I would just say that I wouldn't take the word of the estranged adopted brother who is politically opposed to him. It's really not a great source for anything about John Sullivan. Now, John Sullivan was there. You can see the longer video of him. He comes up beforehand. He's talking to the police and convinces them to move. So he did set the stage for Ashley to die. I do personally hold him partially responsible for it. Obviously, Michael Bird is the one who pulled the trigger. Zachary Alam bashed the window open. If he hadn't done that, that wouldn't have happened. And he was actually lifted up by hashtag red on red glasses and pushed through that window. So I would say he's also partially responsible for that. But, the officer obviously should not have shot. Michael Bird should not have done that without any warning. And obviously there were police on the other side too, so he could have endangered them. There's a lot of different reasons he should have done it, and she obviously wasn't a threat. It also should be noted that you can see her on camera hitting Alam in the face and knocking his glasses off. So it's possible, and a lot of people think what she really wanted to do was really just to turn around and stop everyone else from advancing. So it's hard to say what her intentions were at that point, but she definitely didn't deserve to die.
And I would like to add to that on the previous minute before, there's only 2 minutes before, you see her walking down that hall until she was shot. And in that time when her and Taylor come in, of course, Taylor is, joking around with the one cop. You've got, that white powder stuff all over you too, and you look terrible. And she's like, get help, get effing help. There's people back here coming this way. And if this is the line, you need more than 3 cops standing here with nothing, And then as she's yelling at them, of course, Sullivan's telling them, y'all get out of the way. We don't want anybody to get. And she pulls Zachary back, punch face. And I believe she was just trying to take the win. She was a former MP, Air Force veteran. Knew what she was doing as far as trying to warn those police that more people were coming, that it was going to get worse. And it did. And I believe she was trying to step in front of harm's way instead of make more. I don't think she was that girl at all. And of course, nobody did anything worse that day than Michael Leroy Bird when he pulled the trigger. Nobody made him do that. And yes, Yogananda Pittman was the chief, or not the chief, but the main top dog, I guess, is what Tarek Johnson always said. She was the one in charge. And maybe if she had given the intel to the chief, then that wouldn't have happened at all. Yes, but it did. And you have to give the responsibility to who deserves it. And Michael Leroy Bird needs to be under investigation and charged. And we need to find out who he communicated with, who put him up, in the cover of the government, who was his handler, who did he talk to first that day? Why did he lie on the radio and say he thought there was a shot, he thought somebody was hurt? If that's the case, that all this needs to be, investigated. He needs to be brought to justice so that Ashley can finally get justice. And of course, her mom, Nikki, and the family have a $30 million lawsuit against him with Tom Fitton's group. So that's really good. And we hope that a lot comes out of that investigation that will help other J6ers with those communications and things that we haven't had access to date. So a lot coming real soon.
What I will say, and I, if I'm wrong, if it turns out that I'm mistaken, that's totally fine. But I would put some stock into what James Sullivan is saying about his brother, and I would say that most of what the claims that he made, especially in the interview that I was able to help edit and publish, have been substantiated, especially in terms of the Discord chats between himself and Epps. So like I said, maybe the extent of which he knows stuff isn't can be questionable, especially because they were estranged. We know that Jaden X did make a false claim to Child Protective Services towards his brother, and there's a lot of tumultuous history there. But I'm sorry, what were you saying?
So there's a picture of him and Epps on the 5th. They just happen to be in the same area, but there's also the Discord stuff of Jaden X. There's all of that I've seen. And I know Alex Shepard put out a Rumble video showing it all. I'm sure it was out even earlier than that. But are you saying that there's Discord chats between Jaden and Ray Epps?
No, I don't.
That's just two separate things.
No, those are separate things.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I'm not gonna. It's been a while since I read our report. Available again on nationalfile.com under Patrick Howley and Alicia Powell. But I know that he was talking about this not being the only situation where his brother, Jaden X, was showing up to be an agitator.
Well, obviously he was showing up to be an agitator. There's no question in that.
Right.
And he came through that hallway holding a knife and going, but I mean, there's not some secret intel that his brother has. It's just you watch it on camera and you can see. And he says, let's burn this thing down. And he hits a window off camera and pans over and goes, oh, you didn't see that. But then obviously you can see that it's broken. So there's all these different instances where you see. And also we know beforehand he was saying all these things about Trump. And, he was pro BLM as a philosophy, pro anti-fascist as a philosophy and all that. So. And he's got the Insurgents USA, and even Antifa used to call him a Fed before January.
The information,
so there's all that stuff adds up.
Yeah, the information I was talking about seeming legitimized by his other reportings was that there was a prior relationship between Jaden X and Ray Epps before the Capitol.
Well, I just saw that one picture on the 5th, so if there's anything else, I'm going to have to look into that. I have not seen that.
We've been busy. Hey, I will go this far on little conjecture, I guess, and say that this, and I've said this from day one, Daniel, back me up. If you tell one team to create havoc and chaos and to push all the way up to the window, but don't be the first one through the window, and you tell the other team, stop whoever comes through that window, then you've created a situation where neither one knew what the other one was going to do to a point. And, all the guys broke the window, but they made sure they weren't the first one through, however that happened. And, I'm not putting that out of the realm of possibilities in the fact that maybe Jaden got the same information that those pink masks got, that all the other journalists got, that all the bad actors got, that the feds got. Maybe there were cells or teams that weren't completely aware of each other, that were all working in some kind of harmony, unknowing to each other. So I'm not putting any of that outside of the realm of possibilities, and it all begs for more and more investigation. We need more manpower and more resources to do that kind of stuff, and more time. We are stretched. And anyway, back to the film, I guess.
Yep.
At 2:46 p.m., approximately the same time as Ashley Babbitt is shot by Capitol Police Officer Byrd, a series of smoke and signal flares are activated at various locations around the Capitol.
There's some kind of a flare in the sky there.
As the smoke clears, we again spot Ray Epps leaving the area and flanked by several individuals before leaving the Capitol grounds for the day. Meanwhile, demonstrators continue to enter the Capitol building. The first demonstrator enters the Senate chamber.
Unit 7, we got protesters that are outside of the Senate chamber.
Over the course of the next 30 minutes, the Senate chamber will become a significant location of the day, along with the Capitol Rotunda, the Capitol corridors, and the West Terrace Tunnel. Prior to this point in the day, many demonstrators were free to roam the hallways and chambers of the building, meeting little resistance from Capitol Police.
The police here are willing to work with us and cooperate peacefully, like our First Amendment allows. Gather more Americans under the condition that they will come and gather peacefully to discuss what needs to be done to save our country.
Capitol Police Officer Robichaud asks a small group of demonstrators to remain peaceful.
Show us no attacking, no assault, remain calm. We're not going to assault, we're going to be heard. Everybody, this must be peaceful.
This has to be peaceful. We have the right to peacefully assemble.
Robichaud then proceeds to escort at least one demonstrator, Jacob Chansley, throughout various locations in the Capitol. At 2:46 p.m., additional demonstrators continue to enter the Senate chamber. Security footage shows no Capitol Police presence in the Senate chamber at this time. At this point in the day, many of the demonstrators on the outside have no idea the Capitol has even been breached. Let's go back to the multi-view to see what's going on around the Capitol grounds. On the southeast side, a group of MPD officers arrive to assist Capitol Police with clearing out the inside of the Capitol.
122 Brown, we're sending MPD through the south door of the Capitol. There's about 25 units in hard gear.
Back on the West Plaza, an enormous American flag has been draped over the scaffolding. On the east side of the Capitol, demonstrators have overtaken the stairs and continue to gather on the lawn. Back in the rotunda at 2:48 p.m., we see demonstrators peacefully roaming around and taking photographs. The only law enforcement officers visible are standing in the doorway. As demonstrators continue to roam the hallways, one officer has a concerning realization.
They make it up here. They can go right to the Senate floor. They just don't realize it.
Back at the West Terrace Tunnel, a demonstrator activates a fire extinguisher into the tunnel towards dozens of law enforcement officers.
Motor 13, we need munitions and 50 officers on the rotunda steps, at the top of the steps. We need munitions to clear these steps.
You want to push forward?
Push him back? Yeah, no, right now, no. Wait, okay. Because we got to get numbers.
Yeah.
I'm seeing stars right now.
Inside the Senate chamber, demonstrators are rummaging through desks looking for intel.
Objection to the Arizona.
Objection. He was going to sell us out all along. Really? Look, objection to counting electoral votes of the state of Arizona. Wait, no, that's okay. All right. He's with us.
The standoff back at the West Terrace Tunnel continues, with more demonstrators arriving on the outside and more officers arriving on the inside.
Back up! Back up! Damn it, back the f*** up! Interlock the shields! Lock them together! Lock them together! Do you know how to lock them together? Here, like this.
Was that, where was that spray coming from?
What do you mean?
The what
like
here?
The area of the building?
Here, hold on.
Arizona. Objection. He was going to sell us out all along. Really? Look, objection to counting electoral votes of the state of Arizona. Wait, no, that's okay. All right. He's with us.
The standoff back at the West Terrace Tunnel continues,
Coming up here.
with more demonstrators
Right here.
arriving on the outside and more officers arriving on the inside.
Back up! Back up! Back up! Damn it, back the f*** up!
Going from both directions at that point.
Right. Okay.
Interlock the shields! Lock them together! Lock them together!
I'm sorry.
Some of the police at a bank. some of the police had abandoned their posts and their munitions, and the crowd had gotten a hold of some of the the spent cans of spray that still had stuff in it, and they were using.
Yeah, more retaliation. Okay.
He's just speaking generally. We don't know about that. I mean, unless you do, David, we don't know specifically about that specific spray can. I mean, some people brought their own. Some people used them. Some people didn't use them that they brought. Some people may have. Definitely people sprayed ones.
Yeah, but
people that weren't theirs. Like people had been passing them around in the crowd.
Right.
Sure. But that was the industrial strength police spray can there that you were seeing, that mass.
Oh, your audio cut out. All right, I'm just gonna keep it going.
Lock them together. Here, like this.
There's gotta be something in here we can use against the scumbags.
We're acting a fool, man.
America's Republic. Oh no, this is good stuff.
Hey, we're acting a fool.
No, this is good. This is all good. This is probably not good. He's a good one. Him and Law or whatever.
I think Chris would want us to do this, so
yeah, absolutely.
I think we're good.
Put it over there. We're gonna come from this way. Then you walk yours in. We close this off. You get your arms through these shields. You know how to put your arms. Do we have a hardwood guy here? You. Show them how to lock the shields together and hold the shields. Hey, hold it! Hold it, baby! The only way we're gonna hold this door.
At 2:55 p.m., law enforcement begins to move demonstrators out of the Capitol from various locations.
We are Americans. I pray for every one of you, for your safety.
You need to give up communism is what you need to do. You need to give up communism to protect these people. We're patriots.
How much it costs for you to betray your duty and your people?
But they continue to struggle to control the Rotunda and West Plaza Tunnel.
1776. Hey, don't betray us. Let's go. We're patriots. Hey, go in Nancy's office.
Richard Barnett, the demonstrator who posed for this photo in House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office, attempts to persuade an officer to let him back in to retrieve his flag.
418 Frankfurt, informational. I have a group of about 20 to 30 officers that are cordoned off on the south side of the Rotunda stairs. We're just going to hold the line over here until we get some kind of control of this crowd. There's no enforcement we can take at this time.
Hey, man. Glad to see you guys. You guys are f***ing patriots. Look at this guy. He's got covered in blood. God bless you. You good, sir? Do you need medical attention?
I'm good, thank you.
All right.
Jacob Chansley takes a seat at the Senate dais. He decides to leave a note for Vice President Pence.
Anything else? Now that you've done that, can I get you guys to walk out of this room, please?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
There's 4 million people coming in, so a lot of control. We love you guys. We love the cops.
It's only a matter of time. Justice is coming.
All right, come on.
Let's all say a prayer in this sacred space.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for gracing us with this opportunity. Thank you. Thank you, Heavenly Father.
Yes, sir. I have 75 people inside the Senate chambers, just for information. They are going through death.
Another act of a violent insurrectionist just taking a moment to pray. You know, what?
Well, that's where it lies. That's what was fragile to their democracy. And, we know that's not the case. It's a constitutional republic. But, Yeah, he prayed in there. I think that was his biggest crime. And said, "God bless you" a couple times.
And on top of the podium.
Back at the rotunda, dozens of MPD officers prepare to clear out all of the demonstrators.
Hold the door. They told us to push that way. No. Hold the door.
You're not with Capitol. DC, we're holding on.
All right, 401, just advise the units outside the west side of the door. We've got CDU Hard Squad sending all these individuals out of the rotunda.
I'll take it. Come on. Get them. You good? Grab the police. Let's go. Push. All right. Push them out. Move. Back. You leave! This is our house! This is your job! This ain't your house!
105, I'm currently at the main door to the Senate chamber.
Time to go!
Sorry, up here, the giant script. Let's go.
Thank you.
God bless the men and women in blue. God bless you guys. We love you. You're on your side. Come on, let's go.
Thank you, officers. God bless you guys. Thank you for your patience. We really appreciate it.
Not as glorious in person, is it? Not as glorious. It smells like an old church. Thank you guys.
Back at the scuffle at the West Terrace Tunnel, the situation is rapidly deteriorating. Leading up to the tunnel are a series of steps that demonstrators are having trouble navigating. It is a very tense and dangerous situation in this area. For over an hour, the police have been inside the building, behind the inner doors, while demonstrators have occupied the tunnel.
Girl 5 John is advising they need additional assets.
At 3:19 p.m., the police successfully expel the demonstrators from the tunnel. During the skirmish, a U.S. Capitol police officer is dragged into the crowd of demonstrators.
Let him through. Which way do you want to go? Which way do you want to go? Go back inside. You want to go back inside? Back way! Back way! Go, Herman. Hold. Good guy. Very good guy. Lift them up. We let you go. Come on. Hey.
He is later returned to the police line and heads back to safety inside the tunnel. The demonstrators manage to hold their ground and begin to push the police back into the tunnel. This sets the stage for the final tragic conflict. Demonstrators and police are engaged in physical altercations. Sprayed chemical agents are lingering in the narrow hallway.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us.
At 4:17 p.m., President Trump posts a 1-minute video to his Twitter account, urging demonstrators to stay peaceful and go home.
We have to have peace. We have to have law and order.
Twitter quickly attached a warning label on the video, which read, "This claim of election fraud is disputed, and this tweet can't be replied to, retweeted, or liked due to a risk of violence." This limited the reach of the message. Minutes later, Twitter would remove the entire video message from its platform.
I know how you feel.
So Twitter is also, to be held responsible in a way for this situation. This message that's clearly saying, another in the long series of messages from Trump to stay peaceful and not, get violent, of course they would suppress this. Of course, because that would take away their narrative that Trump is a evil dictator.
Before, during, and after, all three, and we see a lot of that with not only the videos and the posts, but that's the most important guy in the world right there. If you're going to censor what he's trying to say about the most important day in the world, that says a lot about their narrative, what they're trying to get across to the people. That was hidden until people had forgotten about the beginning. That's what the press release is all about, and the media gets their story out. It's hard for people to go back and relearn what they think they know.
Yeah, and they were hiding things, like you said, before, during, and after, and they're now still trying to hide our movie about this.
Yeah, they definitely are.
But you can still see it at open.inc with a K-I-N-K. And that's the thing. So the suppression, it's not like they didn't know on Twitter that millions of people were going, and they should have been prepared. And the FBI says, yes, we knew that there was the potential for violence. We knew this in advance. There were news reports about that on major channels around the country. We're going to prove all of this, that the FBI knew and that they did nothing, and that people on the ground that day asked why they're doing nothing, and they were told to stand down or be arrested. So it's a really amazing cover-up that is finally coming out. And like I said, open.inc with a K-I-N-K. Everybody needs to watch this and share it, because they are throttling this back. They put a sensitive label on our video so it won't go viral. We're locked in at 2 million views, and we need all the help we can get pushing that film out. 2
million views, even especially with suppression, is quite an impressive feat. So I'm very optimistic that.
Well, it didn't get that label until it hit 2 million. So once it hit 2 million, then it got the label, and it hasn't moved since.
That's right.
But it's also not just the label. Like, if you quote tweet it, it will show up as like, this post doesn't exist or whatever, for some people, and then not for others. So you might see it for yourself, and then your followers won't see it or whatever.
And by the way, it got 2 million views in 2 days. And as soon as that warning label hit, like he said, it stopped it dead in its tracks. So there's no telling where it would be by now if they hadn't throttled it back. And
maybe more million.
Yeah, maybe more. So we can get.
So we got a couple more comments. The police did not expel the people. The people turned it around 100%. Hashtag J6, the hashtag J6 pause happens after this. The pause is left out.
Let me address that real quick. There is a scene that we did leave out where one man on his megaphone says the police promised they won't spray us or mace us or beat us, and we're going to sit here until we get our way, and the whole crowd goes crazy. And I mean, it's totally quiet crowd if they can hear one guy on a megaphone, and it's a massive crowd. Well, the Officer Fanone part, when he went down into the crowd, or they say he was dragged, they literally, in my opinion, and I think that we can show video enough of this, stopped him from pulling his gun out down at the bottom of the crowd. You see them holding his wrist all the way back up. They were not going to let go of that right hand, and they carried him all the way back up to the police. There's a whole story about how he lied in his testimony, perjured himself, and came out with a book. There's way more to come on that. But I think the long and short of it is, with the J6 pause, the police had promised they wouldn't do anything. And that caller, or that comment, is right, because the crowd walked out of the tunnel. The police was behind them, and they started shoving them from behind and created the pileup and the push down the stair. People were just, you notice in the video, everyone's facing away from the tunnel as they're just falling down these stairs over each other. And that's the excessive spray from the police, etc., just overkill. And that's where Roseanne Boylan ends up on the bottom of that pile.
Right. It looks horrific. All right, we only got a couple minutes left. Let's power through.
But go home, and go home in peace.
As the demonstrators are pushed back by police, they fall on top of each other. Some are pressed against the ground, unable to move. a woman named Roseanne Boyland, a Trump supporter from Georgia, finds herself pinned under the deluge of bodies. The situation is critical.
Collapsed inside that corridor from asphyxiation. She couldn't breathe. Brought her out onto the main steps outside of that. Several people started doing CPR on her. I tried to get her carotid pulse for several minutes, and even I cut part of her jeans away so that I could try to feel her femoral pulse, and I couldn't feel a femoral pulse at all. By the time that they decided to pick the person up and give them to the police officer, she had blue lips and blood was coming out of her nose.
Man, where does DC Fire need to go for that CPR that's going on?
Didn't seem hopeful at all. I don't think that person will be revived.
Officers transport Boyland inside the tunnel and begin CPR.
Could you please send the ambulance that is coming for the code down at Lower West Terrace to the house door for entry?
Yeah, she got stuck under there. She fell down and...
That trampled?
Yeah.
Boyland is transported inside for one last revival attempt.
Is that one of ours or is that a protester? Huh? Is that one of ours or is that a protester? Protest.
Alright. Excuse me? Alright, F them?
Disgusting.
You heard it right. That's exactly what he said.
They don't care. This is not about public safety. This is about making these guys out to be terrorists, and they knew very well that she would go right on that list of, oh, who cares if she died. Anyway, I'll keep it going.
That was about classifying a whole group of people as one thing and hatred. That's what that was about. Hatred.
CDU 70, they're destroying the media equipment over here in the Senate egg. Copy. Protesters are destroying media equipment at the Senate egg.
At 5 p.m., as the citywide 6 p.m. curfew looms, police are making progress securing the Capitol, and a steady stream of demonstrators leave the Capitol grounds. At 5:10 p.m., police use tear gas to drive the remaining demonstrators from the Capitol's upper levels. Over the PA system, an announcement is made that all individuals are required to leave Capitol Hill or be subject to arrest. At 5:40 p.m., National Guard troops begin to arrive at the Capitol to secure the premises. 1 minute after the curfew goes into effect, Donald Trump sends out a final message to his supporters that day. At 8 p.m., the Capitol is declared secure.
Today was a dark day in the history of the United States Capitol.
Shortly after, at 8:06 p.m., the Senate resumes debate over the certification of Arizona's vote in the Senate chamber. The House would reconvene about an hour later. The election results will be certified. And 14 days later, Joe Biden will walk down the same tunnel and stairs where the police and demonstrators fought for hours, and where Roseanne Boyland took her last breath to be inaugurated as the 46th President of the United States. January 6, 2021. A day of hope and patriotism that turned into a day of chaos and tragedy. For the past 3 years, the shadow of January 6th looms large in our politics, in our culture, and in our national conversation. Are we any closer to understanding the events of that day? Are we still in the timeline of January 6th?
There were only a handful of arrests on January 6th. As of January 2024, 1,251 people have been arrested. 757 of those people have been sentenced to an average of 22 months of incarceration. Nearly 884 years of incarceration have been handed out to the January 6th defendants. Jesus Christ. Nearly 400 are currently awaiting trial. Wow, guys. Well,
special shout out to AJ Fisher, Paul Escondon, and Jason Rink, and Daniel Goodwyn, and Eric Clark, and Tommy Tatum, and Gary McBride, and every J6er that contributed their story. That along this 3-year period, it's a long research train, I guess, or trail that you can follow. That we've just tried to give people an opportunity to tell their story, to show their video. And collect that for history. And this is one of those things that we believe everybody needs to share. Now, the kicker for the curfew question, so I don't leave people hanging and not go back to it. Why was there a curfew from 6 to 6? And why do these idiots think for 1 minute that these violent mob of insurrectionists would honor a curfew that they got on their cell phone if they're there to overthrow the government? Oh, wait, we got a text and it says we have to be at our hotel by 6. So come on, let's go home, everybody, hurry. That's the most asinine thing. But here's the deal. And Kim, because we've dug into this, there's video of the hotels that night where the police had tracked these Proud Boys and these Oath Keepers and these protesters back to the hotels. And they literally barred the doors on some of these hotels with broomsticks, etc., where these people were trapped. And I truly believe that they were scouring through that video to see if they had enough to convince the public to do mass arrests and literally incarcerate thousands of people that night and try to declare it an insurrection. But for more optics and shock and awe, they chose to do a massive manhunt and get even more funding and more investigative power and more Patriot Act and surveillance and crews and video systems. It's crazy. They want to redo the whole Capitol system like that was the failure. It was the people that were the failure, and that's in the police and the higher ups. So, I hope everybody learned something tonight, for one, that they didn't know just by watching the film, some of the behind the scenes investigation stuff that we do and how it all fits together as a puzzle. And trust me, there's tons and tons more that we could not even fit into this film, and we're sick that we couldn't, but it allows us to, go further and further in the investigation.
Yeah, like a big one is the Victoria White situation, where she was in that tunnel before Roseanne was killed. She was beat over the head like with a baton many, many times. But Laura Logan put out a good piece about that recently, so people should go and watch that. But I also wanted to point out that Congress was super eager to get right back into that place and certify that thing as soon as possible, so people can think about that. But most importantly, everyone should go to stophate.com/J6 for the calls to action. If this movie has inspired you at all and you feel like you want to be activated, you want a call to action, you want to know what can you do to help people who are in prison for meandering, people who didn't do anything wrong and their families are hurting, well, there's a prayer group you can join. You can write some letters to these people who are incarcerated, and there's a lot of fundraisers that you can help. There's a lot of funds needed for what's going on, and there's other calls to action on there as well.
Absolutely. And just remember, now they want to start arresting people that were just on the grass, not like they weren't already, but for them to declare that so they can just, at random pick who they need and say, well, they were on the property, so they must have known that it was a federal crime or whatever, when that's definitely not the case at all. But listen, folks, these people aren't allowed their First Amendment rights in court. You need to understand, they make a motion, the prosecution, every time, that they cannot use the First Amendment, which is your right to protest, to free speech, to redress your government, to the press. And they cut that out in the beginning, and you have to defend against these allegations that you were there to overthrow the government. That's why they're getting so many convictions and threatening these people with long sentences so they can get their pound of flesh in a couple of months or another conviction or whatever they want. Right. And it's real torture to these families. They need all the support that they can get if you'll go to stophate.com/J6. And don't forget Open.Inc. Thanks to Catherine and Greg again at Open.Inc. with a K, so that they could let us put this on there, and to Paul and Jason and AJ and the rest of the team for doing such a fantastic job with everything that was provided, everything that they brought to the table to make this such a movie for time, for history's sake. And we can't thank them enough for just being part of the team for that.
And to be more precise, Open.Inc. with a K/J6. Open.Inc/J6 is how you get to the actual movie. And also, when you're talking about the First Amendment, the judge will do a motion, or not a motion, whatever. They will do a ruling that they can't use the First Amendment as a defense, is specifically what you're talking about, correct?
That is absolutely right. And,
So you're not saying they can't speak in the courtroom, obviously.
Right.
But
But
you're doing that, just to clarify for people. That's what he means by they can't use the First Amendment in court. They can't use it as a defense, saying First Amendment is, basically an excuse for what was going on that day.
Yeah, what I'm saying is you can't go and say, I was there to protest, I was there to address my grievances, I was there for free speech, or I was there as a member of the citizen journalist or the press. They say, no, you were there to overthrow the government. That's what you have to defend against. And they kind of take that off the table for you. It's
Right.
totally.
And that's a common tactic. It's not necessarily like a law or a rule, or it's like something that they literally do every time. It's just like, that's what we've been noticing happening. So just, if anyone's like, well, what about this one situation,
Yeah, why can't they just say this and get out of trouble? It doesn't work that way in D.C. with these judges, these juries, and this prosecution. So pray for these
we
people.
Could talk about all the other things the judges have not let in court, for example, like video that's exculpatory, and they'll say, oh, well, we can't show that, but then they're going to show video that makes them look bad, and because of things other people did that had nothing to do with them to prejudice them. But we could just go on and on and on about all the abuses in the courtroom. That would be a whole different live stream.
Absolutely would.
Well,
Absolutely.
I'd be happy to have that live stream with you guys.
Well, hey, we would be happy to do more and more and just educate people on what's really going on, so they will take action. I mean, that's what it is. We have to, because these people did. That's what General Flynn, we owe it to them, and they really stood for us when they thought there was problems with the election. That's it. Who wouldn't want somebody to stand for them if they thought there was problems with the election and COVID and the lockdowns and everything that was going on? Sure, people were there for all reasons, but to know that they were kind of the original election auditors and they're getting crushed by this government. I mean, at our, they're fighting for us and our freedoms and our rights. And, we really need to stand in the gap. 3 long years of, limbo. And it's really hard on these families. The suicides, it's very real. There's a death count. It keeps rising. We're not getting support from Congress or the Senate like they say we are. And, it always sounds good in a soundbite on TV. But when it comes down to the real world, we're not getting the phone calls and we're not getting the action. There are actionable things. Daniel, send them to the clip and people can look. Just go through all the tabs at stophate.com/J6 and you'll see ideas for Congress and other things that they could actually do. And, don't let them tell you they can't, because they could. They just won't. Because what does anyone in the government, in the uniparty, stand to gain by giving us the power back? Nothing. So they're going to work together to continue this cycle no matter what. So anyway, we appreciate y'all letting us do this. And, follow us at Help Stop Hate on X and stophate.com and support our work at stophate.com/support. That's the last little plug I'm going to throw out there, but
of course.
I appreciate you doing this with us tonight and taking the time to go through this.
No, I mean, this is a really brilliant documentary. I'm a big documentary fan in general, and I'm honestly very picky, but this was incredibly well done, incredibly professionally shot, incredibly well edited. Just bravo. This is brilliant, and it just conveys so much information that people don't have access to. So I hope this gets out to many millions more people, and I hope that when the history books are written, Stop Hate gets a prominent thank you in those books.
Well, I appreciate that. Like I tell everybody, we'll trade credit for freedom for our people any day of the week. We don't care about credit. We're just trying to get these people back with their families and back to their lives and back to some kind of normalcy that, they've robbed from them. So I appreciate that a lot. And we're just doing what we can to help. And we hope other people step up.
Even that sentiment alone is reason why you guys deserve the credit for it. But you're absolutely right. We'll leave this on the message: free the hostages, bring these people home, share this information far and wide, and also don't at me. Thank you guys for